This video is going to be my reaction to the news that Derrick Barnes has re-signed an extension with the Detroit Lions, I believe, in the 3 years, just over $25 million range, announced this morning. He's a fun player to watch film of, first of all. Second of all, hopefully this is step one for the Lions front office in rebuilding the team or at least boosting the talent level. And I think Derrick Barnes kind of crystallizes that. I'll explain it a little bit more later. Detroit, first of all, must know that he'll be able to return to full health, or he already is. We know that when healthy, prior to the injury in 2024, extremely versatile, smart football player, athletic enough, look to play inside linebacker on a full-time basis and move over to outside linebacker, particularly to the boundary. I would say that I'm going to make a comparison in this video that perhaps won't hit. It's almost like having an 11 and a half players on the field at times, and I don't mean from the standpoint of a suffocating defense that has 12 or 13 guys on the field. I mean because he can show up places where he wasn't, and then he can line up somewhere and impact the game in a different way, a different manner than what his pre-snap alignment kind of hinted at. Essentially, the quarterback doesn't know who's dropping to cover or rush when Barnes is lined up as an outside linebacker into the boundary. Is he an 8 or 10 sack guy in the NFL? No, clearly not. He's probably not even a 5 sack guy. They wouldn't give those opportunities to him once Detroit's front office, Brad Holmes and those guys, acquire or draft a higher level, more talented outside linebacker edge rusher. But look, what is Derrick Barnes good at? He's exceptional against the run as a 9 technique, in my opinion. Closes space really well, and I will show, I think, 3 plays of that to illustrate here in this video. He's actually very good in coverage. Excellent, I think, into the boundary. He gives the new defensive coordinator, Shepard, options to hide or obscure the coverage, basically a wider coverage umbrella, if you will. And look, the most well-known example of that is his game-sealing interception against the Bucs in the 2023 divisional round win at home in Detroit, pushing the Lions into the NFC Championship game against the 49ers. He can force the quarterback to make reads post-snap. And that's where my analogy or my comparison with 11 and a half players being on the field, that's where what I'm trying to get to is that you can force the quarterback to account for him in 2 places pre-snap and then have to confirm where he's going to be depending on the read, whether it's to the boundary, to the field. And then he can line up an inside linebacker and he plays the run very well. He's not like a Jack Campbell Jack Campbell can fit in the right spot, the right gap against the run at the right time, which is a very unique skill. It's not that other guys don't do it across the NFL, but Campbell's exceptional at having his gap, his assigned gap, but then also fitting off of the running back in some other location at the precise time. That's not Derrick Barnes. Derrick Barnes is a fill right now downhill type of guy. That play to finish the win over the Bucs. And look, as an aside here, I have a ton of film against Tampa Bay in this video. I think 5 plays. Some of it I get confused about what game it was. We all know if it was Week 6, 2023, because that was down in Tampa Bay, so the uniform color in the field. But with how many times those 2 teams have competed in Detroit, if I misspeak, forgive me for that. But in any case, that final play against the Bucs in the divisional round win that I mentioned earlier, that's his career-defining play, if you ask me. I want to display his versatility here. Is the salary too much? I don't think so. I think he's an important piece to this group. He certainly doesn't solve the edge rusher problem, the pass rush situations, known passing plays, third down, high leverage moments. No, he's not going to be your pass rush guy. But I think he makes the situation more clear. Well, how? Whoever they do get, whether it's a rookie or someone they sign in free agency, a veteran, it makes their job more simple, makes their job more direct, if you ask me. They can be off the field in some cases, even on first down. I'm going to show some film here for me that's a little bit cathartic, to be honest with you, because of how infrequently I have been able to get film out recently on YouTube. I've been so deep into draft coverage, trying to produce, hopefully eventually, some type of complete look at least 2 positions in this draft, if not more, that it has pushed a lot of my YouTube film study to the background. So for this one, it feels fitting that it'll be on a guy like Derrick Barnes, who is extremely versatile, smart, and unselfish, and someone that I think all of us, myself included, need to call more attention to players like this across the NFL. So we'll get to the first example here. He's out in space in a 4-3 structure against the Bucs. It's a bunch set out of 11 personnel. One receiver is going to motion through, And he's just committed and extremely decisive. Athletic enough to play out in space, in fact. Now, this is an example of a 4-3 structure that we don't see a ton, and who knows what we'll see out of Kelvin Sheppard, but it's basically you're getting the outside linebacker, Sam linebacker, if you will, out in space as opposed to a nickel DB. It's against 11 personnel, one of the things that Aaron Glenn did. Stay in his base structure at times, kind of give away your hand, maybe, in that you're playing zone in that moment. He's committed. He can be moved around. He's not a guy that just based on being on the field, you can say, okay, I know what the coverage is going to be, or his pre-snap location, I should say. There's really nowhere that he can't perform at an NFL level, inside linebacker or outside linebacker. Again, if you are willing to absolve or pass over the fact that he's not a premier pass rusher, quite clearly. Tackles Justin Fields here. First of all, it's extremely violent play. The type of thing that, maybe in some cases you get a penalty for, but he's a finisher at times. He's into the boundary here and able to navigate not just tackling Justin Fields, but also navigate dealing with a potential blocker that's trying to prevent him from getting to the quarterback sweep play off the motion, basically. And Barnes is able to finish it in a way that other guys were not. Jack Campbell missed 2 tackles against Justin Fields in his rookie year in 2023 that were somewhat similar to that play, more so option-based. But the point is that this is a guy who is able to tackle high-level athletes out there in space like you just saw against Justin Fields. Will he return to full health? I don't know. He's obviously got to be good enough for the Lions front office to commit this much money to. One of the more underrated and I think brilliant plays that I'd like to show you, and hopefully you gain some appreciation of, is this one against the Bucs. He's down here near the end zone. He impacts plays when perhaps he doesn't get credit for them. A lot of underrated stuff, like you ask me, like this. If you ask me, I've broken this play down many times in other videos. Don't get me wrong. He's in the window here for Baker Mayfield, who actually goes to throw the ball. You can see he starts to pull back and throw the ball and then holds on to it. Why? Because Barnes is in the window. Now, the cool thing about this is look at Barnes initially off the snap. He's actually looking underneath. He's looking for work at the wide receiver, in this case, into the boundary. And then by the time Baker Mayfield starts to throw the ball, he's squared up because he's identified the route. What does it allow to happen? Aiden Hutchinson gets the sack. Forced fumble, in fact, almost changes the complete tone and tenor of the game. I think he's fundamentally sound. Is he, like I said, is he worth $16 million? I think it's $16 million guaranteed, 25.5 overall. I think it makes things more clear for the Lions front office. Does it make things more clear for the fans right now? Probably not. My suspicion is that there's probably people who don't support the re-signing of Barnes at this number, but with the salary cap going up, I think it makes sense. That's my personal opinion. It could also be related to the fact that I have an affinity to what I consider to be quality, high-level inside linebacker play, number one, and then number two, also guys who are extremely versatile and unselfish, like Derrick Barnes is, at least on film to me. This last one, I think this is going to be this last one against the Bucs for a moment here, I should say. I think it's a 3rd and 6 from the Week 2 loss. This year at home. The reason I feel confident saying that is because you can see Terrion Arnold is on the field down here. Situation late in the 4th quarter where the Bucs are trying to run the clock out. Campbell and Branch lined up to the 2 tight end side out of 12 personnel. So really trying to take away the strong side run game. Somewhat of a bare concept from an alignment standpoint. And the Bucs instead, I think Baker Mayfield kind of took the blame or the credit for this. They choose to throw the ball on the backside of, what looks like a toss play here to the running back to this side with a little attached slant to Mike Evans back here. And of course, Barnes almost changes this game. Tampa Bay ends up coming into Detroit and getting a win, clearly, like I said, and you know that if you've watched this far being a dedicated Lions fan. This was a brilliant play, in my opinion. Were that ball to get deflected, up in the air in a manner that a Lions player could get under it and get an interception, you could have been looking at a 16-1 record in 2024. As it stands, it ended up being a 15-2. We all know how it ended, but my point in showing so many of these plays against the Bucs by Barnes is I feel like it provides a great example of how versatile he is. And I know there'll be people who say, well, he doesn't get a lot of sacks, he doesn't get a lot of interceptions. Well, he has the interception to finish, seal, clinch the division round win over the Bucks in the 2023 playoffs, actually played in early 2024. And then this play from week 2 this year that was, was nearly game-changing late in the fourth quarter when the Bucks are trying to control the clock and run out the clock, I should say. Still ended up being a loss for the Lions. He's a very versatile player. I don't think that versatility can be overstated. I've mentioned it multiple times here. And it's not always just to the flats, okay? It's not like he's always dropping out to the flats in condensed or compressed space. Here's an example of him. He's going to drop out to the hook to curl area. And I'm going to try to expand upon this a little bit later on. There's many guys who do these types of things, don't get me wrong, but Barnes is able to do this after reading pass. And my spot shadow's a little bit off there. This is a 3rd and 10, mind you, week 18, 2023 against the Vikings, and it doesn't end up in a quote, game-changing play for Derrick Barnes. It's an interception, the only one I think that Cam Sutton got. It's kind of tough to watch, obviously, with the way things turned out for him. My point in showing it is it's not just the versatility of Barnes. Okay, is he going to rush the passer? Could he drop out into the flats? Like I said, less space for him to cover, obviously, than defensive backs, corners, and safeties. Is he going to end up covering the running back, if he was lined up here to the boundary? Those are all natural things for a boundary side outside linebacker to do. He happens to be lined up to the field here with the ball on the left hash. This is what would be considered the field side with the boundary being down here. Hopefully I explained that in a way that makes sense. If I didn't, feel free to let me know in the comment section. But he's not dropping to the flats. He's dropping underneath, so hook to curl almost. It resembles a 3 deep, 3 under coverage. I think this is Romeo Okwara dropping to the other hash, left hash for the offense, right hash for the defense. You don't know where Derrick Barnes is going to end up. That's the whole point. The value in having him out there on some of these passing downs, it isn't to get after the quarterback. It isn't to utilize him in coverage against running backs solely, only doing that. It's that the quarterback and the other team's offensive coordinator don't know where he's going to be. Does Brad Holmes and those guys need to go get a pass rusher opposite Aiden Hutchinson? Clearly, right? They ran out of those guys here in 2024. But earlier on when I compared Derrick Barnes, a healthy Derrick Barnes, playing at a high level, playing 35, 40 snaps a game, when I compared him to having 11 and a half players on the field, this is what I meant. Perhaps it's too subtle or hidden, or I've reached the limit of my ability to explain that idea or that concept, but he's a very good football player. Can he do what Anzalone and Campbell do on a play-by-play basis at inside linebacker? I think there's certain things that he can't do that Anzalone can. Pass coverage, excellent coverage by Anzalone typically. Campbell is better against the run, particularly with counter or zone schemes whereby you've got to fit in a different direction than maybe your initial step. Barnes is more of a downhill, right now guy. Let me hit things 100 miles an hour. But I will tell you what he does do really well. Despite not being a great pass rusher, the stats don't support that. But the film shows you that he's a really good guy against the run. But he's a guy that you can play at outside linebacker on first down. And it's not just his ability to play against the run. Here's an example of a boot play, a run play away from him with a potential boot off of it in the opposite direction. And it's not just that Barnes can do these things, stay flat and then downhill behind the play, go tackle, I think it's Irving, on a run concept away from him. Or if the quarterback was to keep it, then Barnes is athletic enough, a guy who can redirect and go get the quarterback if he boots out in the opposite direction of the running back. The point is, the larger point is that Barnes is capable of reading pass and dropping out into the flats if it's a straight drop back. He gives you that more so than just coverage versatility. And again, that's where I came up with the comparison for 11 and a half players being on defense. He gives you the ability to say, okay, on paper, this player can read pass and get to that zone drop. A lot of guys can't do that. It's drawn up on paper by the defensive coordinator, even at the NFL level, to be a sound coverage, one that puts the outside linebacker in the flats or in the hook to curl. but those guys often don't get to that depth. Barnes reads it quickly, and he gets to that depth, and that's the reason why I showed you guys some of the pass drops earlier. It's a unique skill for someone to be able to do all of those things, in my opinion, and I think you get a couple of other examples of it that I'd like to show before finishing with his career-defining play to this point, the game-ending interception to clinch the win over Tampa Bay in the 2023 playoffs. The horizontal conflict that's created is kind of illustrated there by the running back going to our left. We've got the behind view. In case you didn't see it already, I think my spot shadow dropped out. Sorry. That's Derrick Barnes there. Even at the NFL level, there's guys who struggle to do this. There's guys who struggle to get square and then fold down and get the running back, but still maintain the ability to veer off and go get the quarterback. If he was to keep the ball, it's not a great, play fake, obviously, by Mullins. Guys who can't get back out here to contain the quarterback and at least pressure him while he tries to make the pass, at minimum. If not, be able to go sack him out in space. Barnes doesn't have those plays, the sacks that I just described, but what he does have is plenty of plays like that one where he closes down to finish off the run concept from the backside, essentially close the back door, not let the running back cut it back, but also put himself in ability to defend the quarterback if the quarterback keeps the ball. Not everybody can do that. Every team doesn't have a Derrick Barnes. I get it that there'll be people who say, who disagree with that, and think that every team has a player like Derrick Barnes. They do not. And I think that's the reason why Brad Holmes and the front office have chosen to keep him. Like I said, I was excited to see the news this morning because I was like, okay, it gives me a target. It gives me something to do film of that I am passionate about. Versatility, inside linebacker play, the ability to impact the other team's offensive decision-making both pre- and post-snap with versatile guys who can line up in one place and then execute something else after the play. But it's more so than just the versatility pre-snap. Look at where he's lined up here, and it's kind of tough to watch this play. This is not where he got injured in 2024, but it's somewhat similar to it. Initially lined up at, quote, inside linebacker, I would still call it, even though he's in a apex position out here. The motion brings him back down to a 9 technique. Essentially, they've created what looks like to me a 3-4 front with your 3 down linemen, 2 LLBs, 2 inside linebackers, but they've done so from what would be considered, I think, 4-3 structure at this point, with Barnes lined up, quote, off ball, which is not a phrase that I like to use, but you can see the versatility within the play to be able to move, and then badass sprawl against the cut by the tight end, and, oh, by the way, gets involved in making the tackle against Irvin. It's a great football play, and I think it's one of the ones that illustrates how effective he can be no matter where they put him. Like I said, tough to watch that play given the nature of his injury this year, but the point is he can line up somewhere he wasn't. He can line up somewhere and make a play where he, quote, wasn't post-snap, or threaten to be in a location post-snap that he doesn't end up occupying. In the quarterback's mind, in some ways, it can end up confusing him or causing him a little bit more hesitation, let the pass rush get there. I think at the NFL level, he's more of a downhill now guy as an inside linebacker located here on the left side of our screen. Very different from Jack Campbell. I think the Lions coaching staff got this wrong in 2023. And so what I mean is the differential in alignments between Campbell and Barnes here, much better suited for 2024, before his injury, that is, with Jack Campbell here and Derrick Barnes here. It ends up working out on this play. Barnes, as an inside linebacker, is a downhill now guy. He's not a guy that is going to shuffle a lot and stay square and then fit. He's a downhill right now guy as inside linebacker. McNeil gets there first as part of this play. My point in showing it in all of these plays is the versatility, the not just ability, but the willingness to execute a multiplicity of concepts post-snap. I don't think that Jack Campbell, they found out in 2023 as rookie, wasn't suited to be outside linebacker into the boundary. They got it wrong, like I said earlier. Once they switched things up, later that season, let Campbell play inside linebacker. Barnes be the, quote, hybrid outside linebacker, inside linebacker guy who occasionally dropped into the boundary. Things looked a whole lot cleaner. And then we'll finish up with his best play ever as a pro, ultimately one that I think exemplifies exactly what I'm talking about throughout this video. He can show up in places that he wasn't. He's a force multiplier, if you will. There's probably a word or a military analogy out there, Boundary side, outside linebacker, Anzalone and Jalen Reeves-Maben since released here. Like I said, this is 2023 film. And the cool thing about this is what he's willing and able to do post-snap with his eyes. Lining up and then dropping out inside leverage of the tight end, eyeing the tight end, and then leveling off, getting his eyes back to the quarterback. It's a lovely skill and just fun for someone like me to watch and try to explain to you with whatever knowledge I have. Then the ball skills. Is it a great throw by Baker Mayfield? Well, no, right? You do have a really nice move to get to the quarterback. I believe it's Kaminsky. We'll give the end zone angle in a moment. So that kind of plays a role here as well in Baker Mayfield's throw. But the ball skills to go get this thing. I am using a new player here, so you'll have to let me know if you enjoy it or if the film ends up being grainy when I slow things down on my end, on my streaming, my source, laptop. It looks really smooth when slowing things down. If it does not look that way for you guys on your end, which is my output or streaming laptop, then feel free to let me know in the comments section or when this thing premieres. Last look at that same play. It's a great feeling to watch some of this film. I know that you, as a Lions fan, are way past these feelings. You know, second playoff win in a row here in Detroit, 2023. We're now outside of a year of that very different finish to the 2024 playoffs. I think Derrick Barnes is the kind of guy that makes more moments like this happen, either for himself or other guys. You know, how do you quantify that? They don't use, plus minus in the NFL. So I have no idea of necessarily telling. I don't pay attention to PFF stuff, but I feel like PFF is a way that guys like Barnes' contribution can be a little bit more quantifiable. I don't subscribe to PFF, and I don't really use it that often. In this case, I'm being quite selective in referencing it. I think it helps a guy like Barnes, especially on plays plays where he doesn't get the interception, but plays where he drops out, forces the quarterback to not throw the ball, which is what you see more often than not. Here, a little bit of desperation on the part of Baker Mayfield and the Bucs being down in the playoffs on the road. Overall, I think it's a good signing for the Lions. Time will judge it. I think it's a great signing, for real. There's better pass rush options that might be available soon, that are already. I was in the middle of creating a Joey Bosa a film study look that wasn't Lions or Ravens specific, just a Joey Bosa film study. Should someone sign him? What's he worth now? Can he still play? And then when this news popped up Friday morning and I had some availability or time to produce it, I wanted to get something out because I think Derrick Barnes' effort in Detroit, his progression through his career deserves it and warrants it. Been a very good football player there. With the salary cap climbing every year, I don't have a problem with the price point, but I recognize that other people might have a different opinion, and I don't. I will not decry anyone who has a different opinion than I do in terms of whether it was too much money or not to allocate for a guy like Derrick Barnes, who's not going to produce 5 to 8 sacks, maybe not even get to add that number ever, but he's a productive player, very smart, big piece to Aaron Glenn's defense, and I think he will serve Shepard in the same manner moving forward. You guys are welcome to let me know if you agree or disagree in the comments section. Again, if the player or the video was choppy at all, please let me know. I have paid money for a new player in a way that can be presented, number one, and number two, house the Lions/Ravens offensive database, as well as grade players from a formulaic standpoint. So I intend to produce content next year that grades Ravens and Lions players only on the offensive side, unfortunately, just because of time constraints. But in any case, if you enjoyed the video, please let me know in the comments section. Number one, it's the first piece of content, film study related, that I've been able to put out for a while. So it feels good to be able to produce something, in this case for the Lions fan base. And then second of all, if you think other Detroit fans would appreciate this one, please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.